Greatest Hits Radio, and the question is Dry January continuing live from the pub? Because the drinks trolley is going past. We're just grabbing something. Susie's going to tell us what it is. Looks interesting. What have you got for us today?
Yeah, well, I have continued the zero alcohol today. I've gone for, if you like a gin and tonic, this is something you could have instead. Pentire Adrift, which is a kind of spirit that is 0%, that is kind of tastes like a gin, but without the calories and without the alcohol as well. So you could swap it out for your gin and tonic.
Matt, that's for you.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be taking part of a Pentire. Pentire, what? Pentire Spirit?
Pentire Adrift.
Drift. Yes. Okay, that's very good. Okay, thank you for the helpful suggestion. Today's confession comes from Michael. It's a bit of a... This is an interesting one. I think you'll like this, okay? Father Simon, Brother Matthew, and Sister Susie and Holly. For my confession today, I'm going to join two of my passions that I share with the Right Honourable Father Simon. That being cinema and, of course, confessions.
Oh, right, of course, yeah.
I remember renting a video of a film by director Christopher Nolan back in the early 2000s. It starred Guy Pearce in the lead role, an actor who used to be best friend of Kylie and Jason in the days of the late 80s Aussie soap Neighbours. Whilst Kylie and Jason forged their pop careers, Guy went on to hone those Neighbours acting chops. It was his lead role in the film Memento that struck me for its originality. I imagine many listeners might not have seen the film, a lot will have done, of course. Its main special feature is that it plays out backwards. The first scene that you see in the film is actually the end of the story. The next scene is something that happens half an hour earlier in the story, and it works backwards as the film progresses. Thus, I shall present this confession today in similar backwards time frame in honour of that clever film.
This is ambitious.
No one has ever done this before.
No.
So a backwards confession. Here we go.
Yeah.
So we start at the end. My neighbour, George, was mowing his lawn. It was around 6 p.m. and a sunny late July Sunday evening. We were in the middle of a lovely hot spell. Temperatures had been in the 30s for at least 3 weeks. I got out of my car on the driveway and the two of us were chatting. George was shaking his head, telling me that Mildred, his wife, had been in a foul mood all afternoon. Instead of their usual Sunday evening roast dinner at 5 p.m, he had been given cheese and onion sandwiches. He was a bit baffled by it all. He was pretty sure that he hadn't done anything particularly wrong. Indeed, he felt that his husbandry performances of late had been in rather good form, whatever that means.
Let's not dwell.
No.
Nice.
He'd done the weekly shopping earlier that morning. Oh, there you go.
Oh, right.
He'd taken their daughter to her dance class that afternoon, and now he was out here mowing the lawn. All of this deserved a place in his wife's good books, but to his bafflement, she was barely speaking to him. The mood in the house was not good. In Memento style, we flash back 3 hours to our manly, neighbourly chat. As I was leaving the house, I could hear through the open windows Mildred and her daughter having a bit of a ding-dong next door. With George at the shops, Mildred had been doing her Sunday ritual of giving their house a good clean, something that she did every weekend and something that she did very well. I could hear Mildred raising her voice to her daughter. "It's gone. You must have had it." "I haven't touched it, Mum, I swear." "I bet you have." "I bet I haven't." I closed as it went on like that for a while.
Yeah, no, got it.
I closed my car door, clicked my seatbelt and drove off, leaving them to their discussions. Now we flash back to another hour before that. Mildred and my wife were talking over the garden fence. Mildred was explaining that she'd been preparing dinner, listening to the radio, putting the ironed clothes away and vacuuming the stairs. Classic female multitasking, says Michael.
Okay.
This is the 1950s.
Yep.
Just like she'd done 1,000 times before. Yet this time when she went back into the kitchen, something very bizarre had occurred. And so we come to the final scene, and yet also the very first part of my confession story. It was Sunday morning. I had just showered and come downstairs. I had my list of Sunday chores in my head. I was kneeling, tying my shoelaces. In the corner of my eye, I noticed our cat, Eugene, meowing to me. I looked at him. He looked back, quite pleased with himself, in the way cats do. He'd just entered through the cat flap and had what looked like a flat, punctured brown football beside him. He nudged it towards me with his head. It made me jump a little as I looked up and saw this strange brown blob beside him. This was not usual for Eugene. He would normally bring home a field mouse that he'd caught during his nighttime hunting sessions, but this was considerably bigger than any field mouse. Eugene's gift was laid out for me to inspect. I walked over, a bit sheepishly, to see what it was. This was the hot spell. Everyone had been leaving their windows open, and that morning Eugene had gone out hunting. He'd popped in through the neighbour's window, and there he'd spotted a nice, juicy, brown, cooked chicken sat on the kitchen workshop.
My.
A whole chicken, too good to be left behind. He clearly decided to bring it home as a gift for us, his family. And so the mysterious reason for our neighbour Mildred's foul mood, the reason for her argument with her daughter, the reason for George's cheese and onion sandwiches, Eugene had stolen next door's Sunday roast. I would like to seek forgiveness, Father Simon, for not coming clean to George and Mildred about any of this on that day. It just seems so much simpler pretend that I didn't know anything at all. Our neighbours had never really been that keen on Eugene, and this wouldn't have helped matters. I also like to seek forgiveness, if I may, on behalf of our little hunter-gatherer Eugene for his chicken-stealing crimes. I'm sure he did it with the best of intentions. I hid the chicken in the outside bin, and we've since moved house, so I feel it's now finally okay.
That's fine.
To come clean. I think you're probably fine after all these years. Very good. A confession told backwards, but it kind of made sense told that way. Very Chris Nolan. What do you say, Susie?
Well, I do give Michael 10 out of 10 points for creativity there, because it was good. I like the backwardness of the confession. And I kind of want to say, well, it's not his fault the cat stole the chicken. But apart from the words classic female multitasking, I feel like he just could have said multitasking there. And for that reason, I'm not going to forgive it.
Not forgiven. Okay, thought that's where it was going to go. But Matthew says,
I'm going to forgive, because as Susie points out, it's the cat's fault. The cat's the one that's going and getting the chicken. How big is this chicken that he's managing to get it through a cat flap? That's not a very big chicken. And how's that feeding 3 people? I don't think it can. So maybe Mildred needs to think about getting a bigger chicken. And so not to blame there. And also, but the great storytelling there from George and Mildred and Michael and all the rest of them, and Eugene. Let's not forget him. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, very good. Okay. Well, it's an ingenious tale, but do you forgive Michael, yes or no? On the old text, 61054, first word is Simon, forgiven or not for today's How Big is a Chicken Cat Flap kind of story. Before we go any further, we had a confession just before the news. It was a backwards confession, but it was a story of neighbours, cats, and a stolen chicken, all told in the style of Chris Nolan. Michael sent it in, and Matt has the verdicts here.
Yes, Bev says, forgiven. Amazing work from Eugene there. Hilarious confession. I wish my cat brought in roast chicken. He always brings in a dead mouse. Vicky in Belfast, forgiven. My cat once stole a pet goldfish from my next-door neighbour. A roast chicken is fine. But Faye in Hull says, not forgiven. Why does no one take responsibility for their pets anymore? Eugene took George and Mildred's lovely roast chicken. Do you know how much one of those costs? He should have gone over, apologised, and offered to buy a replacement chicken.
Well, thank you very much indeed for all the verdicts that have come in. Thank you for the confessions. Send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Aided, I would think, maybe by the drinks trolley. I'm not quite sure whether that's going to work in drinking January, dry January. What are you offering us today, Suze? Anything interesting, or is it a little bit disappointing?
I've gone for a boozy one today, so maybe a bit more happier. It's a pale ale. It's not too strong. It's 4%, and it's called Boost, and it's from Daya Brewing Company in Cheltenham, and it's very, very tasty.
Okay, well, a half, please. Maybe just can be for Matt to have before he leaves.
Of course.
Just to set him in good stead. Today's confession comes when it's signed Anon Stupid.
Oh.
So it's an anonymous email, anonymously stupid, as very high opinion of himself. Simon and the team, I need to take you back to the summer of 1992. I was a mere 23 years old and had just completed a law degree. It was 3 years of hard graft, and as a treat, my sister and brother-in-law decided to treat me to a holiday with them to Spain.
Oh.
Very nice.
Nice.
The problem with being a 23-year-old graduate was that I thought I knew everything in life. And as a potential future lawyer, I also thought I had to ensure that I was refined in thought, word and deed. So even a forthcoming trip to Lorette de Mar with my sister, I had to ensure I began my request for refinement as a future lawyer in earnest. Not quite sure how you go on a holiday to Spain trying to be refined. But anyway, this is precisely what a non-stupid did. The problem was, Father Simon, I had never been abroad before in my life. So there were certain parts of the holiday which exposed my total naivety to the world. First night in a nice restaurant, my sister and brother-in-law decided to order themselves steak and chips. I really fancied that secretly, but thought, no, I need to be more refined. And as I scanned the menu, decided to order the fish platter, not knowing at all what it was, but it sounded posh and refined, and the type of food a future lawyer would be ordering.
Of course they would, yeah.
I mean, a non really is stupid.
Yeah.
To my horror, as the juicy steaks were brought out for my family, I looked down at the fish platter, expecting well-prepared Findus-like cod in butter sauce, or fish fingers, or fish cakes, or rissoles, or something. I looked down at the fish platter, and although cooked, none of it had been deboned, and the fish heads had not been removed. And all I could see were 20 fish eyes staring back at me. As I glimpsed at my sister, she was desperately trying not to laugh as she devoured her juicy steak. My appetite disappeared quickly. That is the kind of fish platter that you would get in Spain.
Yes, you would. Yeah.
That's exactly
absolutely.
what you would expect.
Correct, yeah.
If you knew anything about Spain, or indeed fish platters, but a non-stupid did not. By the time the next day when we visited the local fair that had come into the resort, it had the usual fairgrounds and rides and stalls. The only difference was that nothing was in English. I mean, imagine.
Surprise.
I decided to have a go and try my luck at the shooting range. Bear in mind, I had not done this in my life before either. But I wanted to prove to my brother-in-law who was watching that I was not a complete idiot.
After the fish thing,
I'll show him, I thought, and I paid the stall attendant and I took aim at the first target. Bang went the gun. Yes, I got it. I hit the target. Yes. Second target. Bang. Oh, I got that one as well. Fantastic. My confidence was growing stronger and stronger. It was when I hit the third target with a bang that I heard in broken English in a frantic tone. No, how would you say stop in Spanish?
Para.
Say, okay, do that again.
Para.
But now kind of angry.
Para.
Okay. Father Simon, it was pointed out to me by the enraged stall holder that I was not supposed to be shooting at the main prizes.
Oh, not the prizes.
So the broken bottles of whiskey, gin and vodka that lay strewn across the floor were not meant to be the targets. And the very angry man who was shouting,
Para.
insisted rightly that we paid for all the damage that I had stupidly caused. I was meant to shoot at the tiny matchsticks that I could hardly see, which were not as obvious as the litre bottles of spirits that I had destroyed with my weaponry. So, Father Simon, I asked for forgiveness for being the most stupid 23-year-old that ever visited Spain. And for being pretentious and ordering the fish platter, and most of all for thinking I was a master marksman at the rifle range, when in fact I was just a bumbling idiot whose trip to Lorette de Mar cost me a lot more than I bargained for. It sounds as though a non-stupid, this has stayed with him somewhat.
It has.
And that he was taken down a peg or two, as they say in Spain. Sister Susie, what do you say to a non-stupid?
Well, I think he's named himself correctly there, because he does sound like he's a bit stupid, really, doesn't he? Like, if you go to a restaurant, just eat what you want, is what I'm going to say. If you want steak, just have steak. Don't feel like you have to eat in a certain way to start with. And you can't be surprised that the fair had all the signs in Spanish when you were in Spain.
Yes,
so
that's a fair point.
But shooting booze bottles, you shoot. What a waste of alcohol! What a waste of booze! And they're not forgiven from me.
So how dumb do you have to be actually aiming at the prizes?
Yeah.
Wow.
At least they weren't
Legally.
fish in plastic bags. That would have been even worse.
Those, yes.
Yes, because that's Brother Matthew, what are you saying to a non-stupid?
I'm going to forgive. Is it a crime to try to want to be a bit more sophisticated when you're on holiday? No, it's not. That's all he wanted. He just wanted to look cool and refined on Lorette de Mar. No, it wasn't a great idea to order the fish platter, but that's okay. And also, what's this stall doing where you can only win prizes by shooting a matchstick? How on earth? No one's shooting a matchstick. You've got to be professional to be able to do
that. It's all rigged, man.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it is. So for those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Okay, well, I think you're suggesting that the fare was corrupt. That's what you're suggesting.
Glad you're going down that road.
Well, no.
Let's get the lawyers on.
Okay, anyways, 1992, so it's fine.
Yeah,
Anyway, so the people's verdict, please, for Anon Stupid. 61054. Forgiven or not? For the news, though, a confession from someone who called himself Anon Stupid. A tale from Spain, when Anon Stupid was 23 and he was trying to be posy and refined. Anyway, he was off to the shooting range, but instead of shooting the targets, he actually shot the prizes, which fortunately were inanimate bottles of whiskey, gin and vodka, though it was clearly a waste of good alcohol. The people's verdict here summarised with Matthew.
Yes, Lisa Marie in Stourbridge says, forgiven. How's one supposed to shoot like Clint Eastwood or Lee Van Cleef? It's a spaghetti, all right. A tin of it on toast. Kirsty says, forgiven. Reminded me of being at a fair with my dad. I had to go at throwing darts at playing cards. Unfortunately, the rather large stall holder lady was bending over and the dart ended up in her. My dad, who had noticed and encouraged me to make a hasty exit, in my defence, I was 11.
Awkward.
And Andy B from Braintree says, he seems to have had a sheltered upbringing, but perhaps he should have prepared and taken a phrase book with him. If he went on to become a lawyer, I fear for his clients.
Yes, that seems very fair. Thank you for the verdicts and thank you for the confessions. Send them to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Here it comes. Let's check out the drinks trolley brought in by Sister Suze, who's not in the pub. She's actually in the saloon bar of the studio at Greatest Hits Central. Here, what have you brought up on the train with you today?
I am indeed. I've brought up one which I feel goes well for January. It's called Optimist. It is a mosaic pale ale using mosaic hops from Bristol Beer Factory, 4.4%.
Nice.
Quite sessionable. And yeah, it's delicious. One of my favourite hops, if you were to ask me, is mosaic.
Well,
What are
nice
your
beer.
favourite hops,
I've got
Matt?
so many. I don't want to choose just one. That would
No?
be fair, really. Just so many hops. All of the hops.
It's difficult to choose, isn't
There's
it?
so
really?
many.
So
Old
many.
Testament, New Testament,
Yeah,
it's hard to think.
Give you a list.
Okay, today's confession, for reasons that will become apparent, comes from Professor Pat Pending. Father Simon, this is a Wacky Races reference.
Oh, right.
Father Simon, Brother Matt, Sister Susie and Holly. My name is Chris. Oh, hang on.
Not Chris.
My name is Professor Pat
Pat
Pending.
Pat Pending.
And I wish to seek forgiveness for an act of friendliness which led to a very, very unexpected series of consequences. My confession dates back 10 or more years to when a colleague and I were seconded to work in the Middle East for 16 months. We'd worked there previously, but only on 2 short trips of a week at a time, and each time we'd been chauffeured around the perilous roads of Saudi Arabia's capital city, while staying in some very nice hotels. As this trip was to be for a significantly longer period, split into blocks of 10 to 12 weeks at a time, we were to be living in a Western compound and required to drive ourselves in a company-supplied SUV, a vehicle which we were grateful for as it provided a great degree of safety, as you can imagine. Being conscientious and law-abiding people, my colleague and I did our homework before arriving, studying the Saudi traffic laws in detail and also researching local road use customs to ensure we stayed safe. We also learned some basic words in Arabic, and I even grew my moustache bigger and bushier than normal, because apparently it made you look trustworthy.
Oh,
So something to
Wow.
consider.
good work.
Okay. Now, having been in the country before, we were all well aware that driving on Saudi roads, particularly in the area of Riyadh, was a challenging and sometimes hazardous activity. For example, a 3-lane dual carriageway would regularly accommodate 5 cars abreast on each side, with the lines being nothing more than a suggestion as to where to position your vehicle on the road.
Goodness.
Use of indicators widely omitted, and a casual wave of the hand was deemed sufficient compensation for cutting someone up. One law that everyone observed was that if your car's nose is ahead of another, you have priority and you can just do what you want. In general, it worked very well. Scary but efficient. John and I were virtually... yes, that's right. My colleague and I were virtually paranoid and thus drove with extreme care at all times. I should have paid more attention. So to the event in question. It was our 3rd day in the country and my first drive to work in the morning rush hour. With John's help, we navigated successfully along the route and finally started along the perilous final road to our destination. Virtually all road junctions in the area are controlled by traffic lights, with cars stopping suddenly due to the offence of driving through a red light being observed strictly, and the penalty for not stopping being harsh and rigidly enforced. The traffic lights are positioned well back from the junction, and it was usual for the first 3 cars in each lane to drive past the lights and stop just before the intersecting road. So therefore you cannot see the lights from where you
Of
are.
course, yeah.
We're about 6 cars back in the middle lane, and we waited patiently for our turn to move. I looked to my right and I recognised a man who we'll call Mac, that we'd seen the day before, sat in the car, also waiting. Being a friendly sort of chap and keen to make friends, I decided to attract his attention and wave a good morning, and then I beeped my horn twice and waved in his direction. And what happened next has haunted me ever since. And I rarely ever touch a vehicle's horn unless absolutely necessary. You see, Father Simon, unbeknownst to us at the time, the cars which stopped behind the lights beeped their horns as a courtesy to inform the drivers in front of them that the lights had changed to green. And it was now safe to proceed. Along with violent braking at traffic lights came violent acceleration away from them. But of course the lights had not changed, and a huge stream of traffic was still coming from our left as their lights were green and it was their turn to go. The drivers in pole positions hit their accelerators and sped forward, only to meet the other traffic still coming at them. The scene was like something out of Wacky Races, with cars going in every direction possible, tyres screeching, several vehicles mounting the curbs to avoid each other. 30 seconds seemed like hours as we watched on in horror. Chaos, carnage, mayhem. All the cars waiting behind the lights had stayed put, and when the lights finally did change, they proceeded as if nothing had happened. The carnage didn't exist. 2 police officers at a checkpoint by the side of the road paid absolutely no attention to the scene that I had caused and casually waved us through. I think my moustache might have helped at that point, as I did look particularly trustworthy that morning.
Yeah, it's definitely the moustache.
I kept it until we finally left the country for good. I have to say that the inhabitants of the country we encountered were really nice and friendly people. We had a great time. So I seek forgiveness for my naive gesture of friendliness, which almost led to a multi-car pile-up and carnage on an extremely busy road in a foreign country. And it was all definitely my fault, even though I was just trying to be friendly.
Just trying, wasn't
Just trying to be friendly, as I was just trying to segue seamlessly from one piece of music
And it worked.
to another. I think so.
Smooth.
I think so. Carnage and mayhem applies there as well. Anyway, I mean, Professor Pat Pending was doing his best. It was just that it was a bit rubbish.
Yeah, he was doing his best, but it was also, I think he said the first day he was doing this proper journey. So if it's your first day doing the proper journey, you need to be concentrating on what you're doing. You need to be looking at the road. You need to be looking at the traffic lights, not cooey, hello, to your mate over there. Yeah, it's just, I hear what you're saying. He's just trying to be friendly. He's just trying to make friends. But that was not the time or the place. He should have been concentrating on what he was doing. And it's a good job no one got hurt. So
well, I also think it's quite interesting that the police didn't care.
Yes.
Okay, no, it's fine,
Tells you
whatever.
quite a lot.
Brother Matthew.
Yes, I mean, Pat was doing his best, wasn't he? He was growing the moustache, and he'd learnt all the rules, hadn't he? And it wasn't his fault, really. I mean, you've got to question the system, really. This system of going past the traffic lights and then relying on people behind you to beep their horns. Maybe that's not a great system. And he showed everyone in Saudi Arabia that it wasn't a great system by showing the flaws in that system.
So he's pointing the way.
So yes, he's pointing the way, isn't he, with his moustache? Not that the police were that bothered. So yes, I'm gonna forgive.
Wonder if he twirled his moustache like Dick Dastardly.
Oh yes, who also Wacky Races reference.
Okay, well, it's the people's verdict. Please, do you forgive Professor Pat Pending? On the text, please, 61054. First word is Simon. But we had a confession from Professor Pat Pending. Chaos on Saudi roads, and it was basically all his fault because he was too free and easy on the horn. Let's just say that. I mean, he was trying to be kind, he was trying to be helpful. It's just that it wasn't what you're supposed to do. Chaos, carnage, and mayhem. And the people's verdict like this.
So Barry says, forgiven. I lived in Saudi for 6 years. The only rule of the road is there are no rules. Everyone drove like it was Wacky Races all the time. Debbie in Staffordshire, definitely forgiven. I understand that Saudi Arabia has different traffic laws, but the drivers could still have looked left themselves and seen the cars coming.
No.
It's probably their fault if they carry on driving.
Fair.
And Will in Staffordshire says, not forgiven. Mustaches don't warrant forgiveness on any occasion. Besides, his bushy moustache probably affected his vision. Not sure he knows how moustaches work.
No.
But anyway, yes.
That would have-
Good point, Will.
I think they're eyebrows you're thinking of. Anyway, all right. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk.
Come to my greens.
You can have mine, I think. Let's check in, though, before we get there, because the drinks trolley is here just to get everyone going with a little bit of excitement. Suze, what have you got for us off your trolley today?
Yeah, I feel like this one's going to be quite divisive or controversial, but I'm going with it anyway. It's a collaboration between the Coffee Collective and Vault City Brewing, and they have come up with an espresso martini imperial stout. So it's like coffee, stout, cocktail. It's 13%, so it's pretty pokey, but it shouldn't work, but it does. It's very delicious.
I'll take your advice on that. Matt has
One
gritted
Pacific.
teeth.
No, it sounds
What a
fab.
surprise.
That's great.
Today's confession comes from, well, it's signed The Accidental Chef.
Okay.
That's no names, just The Accidental Chef. Father Simon, forgive me, for I have sinned against culinary diplomacy and possibly the entire French nation.
Ooh.
It all started when France and the UK were locked in a fierce battle to host the Olympic Games.
Oh, yes, of course. Yes.
At work, the rivalry was intense. My French colleague, let's call him Eric, was very French, proud, passionate, and absolutely convinced that France would win, which was not a bad viewpoint given that they were considered strong favourites. He was in full agreement when their French Prime Minister made that infamous comment about Scottish food, muttering multiple times that he wouldn't serve most of our dishes to his dog. Eric said he speaks the truth. Our Prime Minister, your food is terrible. That's how he said it.
He did,
spoke.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, very French.
Well, as you know, the UK won. Zut alors, sacré bleu, and so on.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we didn't hold back our glee when the results were announced. Not at all in keeping with the class of Seb Coe, Denise Lewis and co. And Eric looked genuinely crestfallen. In a moment of weakness and in a spirit of reconciliation, aligned with the Olympic spirit, or maybe a bit of mischief, we invited him to my flat for dinner. We told him it would be a proper British meal, and it was sort of. On the table, we served haggis alongside cheap pork pie,
Yes.
humble pie, a selection of low-grade, vaguely out-of-date cheese from our fridge, hard cheese, and perfectly decent bunches of grapes, sour grapes.
Ah.
We served humble pie, hard cheese, and sour grapes. We quickly explained the joke, thinking he'd laugh, nibble politely, and leave most of it untouched so we could go out and have something more appetizing. But Eric, being Eric and being French, took it literally and as a matter of national honor. He announced that he would finish every last bite. I will eat every last bite.
He said.
He said, just like that. At first, he tackled the pork pie with confidence, but by the time he reached the haggis, never an easy sell in my opinion, his enthusiasm began to falter. Each forkful seemed to take longer than the last. His smile faded into a grimace, his conversation slowed, and beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. J'ai perdu mon âme, he would say. I've lost my soul.
Yes, yeah.
When he moved on to the grapes, he seemed relieved, but ended up chewing them like bullets. And by the time he reached the cheese, he looked like a man climbing Everest without oxygen. His face turned a shade of green no Frenchman should ever wear. And his eyes had that distant look of someone questioning all their life choices. By the end, he looked like he'd lost more than just the Olympic bid. More than his French pride, it seemed he'd lost part of his culinary soul, never to return. Tout est perdu. I think you're overselling it, accidental
Yes.
chef, by the way. Simon, I confess, I made a Frenchman eat humble pie, literally, and sour grapes and hard cheese. Ha ha! He left that night a broken man, and I'm not sure he ever forgave me or Scotland for that matter. And so, Father Simon, to be honest, I don't seek forgiveness for lauding our victory, nor for serving poorly cooked and vaguely out-of-date food to a friend. No, my true sin was far greater. I gravely offended and permanently altered a sophisticated, delicate French palate, one that may well never recover. I'm not sure about that. I mean, I think you're overselling your crime, but it was clearly an offensive thing to do because he was a man suffering and ashamed of what had happened. And you made him feel a whole lot worse. Here's Sister Susie with the authoritative word.
Well, I do think he was kind of over-egging his thing at the end, but I just think in general, bit mean is what I'm going to say. I don't think he needed. If you invite someone for dinner, regardless of the circumstances, just what are you serving them that rubbish for? And I just think, even if it was a joke, it's just not nice. So I'm not going to forgive.
Not nice, but quite funny, I think.
Yes, I thought so.
Yeah, quite funny.
I'm going to forgive. It was a metaphor, wasn't it, Eric? You're not supposed to eat them. It was, just the hard cheese and the sour grapes and all of that. You're just supposed to giggle along and then leave. You'd think a Frenchman would understand a metaphor. Clearly not.
Why would you think that?
Well, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Exactly. Good point. So I'm definitely going to forgive. I remember the front page from the French newspapers when London won the Olympics. Pourquoi Londres? They said, and the answer is because we had the better bid, Jean-Philippe. Right. So for those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
Qu'est-ce que c'est? Fa. Sont des mots qui vont très bien ensemble. Voulez-vous coucher avec moi?
No.
Etc. Okay, there. It wasn't a question. It was just as obvious. Anyway, do you forgive the accidental chef? 61054 on the text. His verdict is in like this.
So, forgiven, says Hannah. The French chap was rude about fantastic Scottish cuisine. He got what he deserved. But not forgiven, says John in Chester. I felt sorry for the Frenchman in the end. If you're hosting a dinner party, why would you humiliate him by bringing out sour grapes and humble pie? Who goes to that much effort just to prove a point? But Gary in Leeds says, forgiven, I'm a proud Yorkshireman. Frogs, legs and snails or a pork pie? Come on, no contest.
Thank you very much for the verdicts. Thank you for your confessions. Send yours, please, to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.